Hey everyone, welcome to the Tech and Real Estate live stream. Today I'm super excited because we have Ken and Jeff from Sub to Empire. And if you're new to this live stream, we go over practical advice on how to look at deals, analyze them, and we get experts as well. So while you're entering, please let us know where you're coming in from in the comments. And I'm going to quickly go over some housekeeping items here. So today our focus is subject to deal analysis. And as always, I like to start off with what's going on in my world as well. So recently, when it comes to the data, we refreshed our intelligent market selection dashboard. So if you want to start analyzing different cities, you can do so. I was playing around with it a little bit earlier, looking at what new cities have hit the top for cash flowing deals. I'm still working on content for the course that will be paired with the Data-Driven Investor's Guide coming out October 16th. And personally, I'm super excited tonight, but also nervous for the Giants playing in prime time against the Cowboys. So hopefully we can pull out a win here. But what you're all here for, the main event, which is to go over subject to deal analysis. And we have Jeff Coffman and Ken Rossics here from Sub to Empire. So with that, I am going to stop sharing here. And Jeff, Ken, I'd love to hear a little bit about your backgrounds, maybe what you were doing before real estate and ultimately what led you into the path of real estate and creative finance.
Jeff, you want to go first?
Well, I was going to ask you the same thing.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
That's right.
Okay. Sure. Well, guys, my name's Jeff Coffman. I founded Sub 2 Empire here in 2020. I've been running this coaching program since 2020. Essentially, my background is, I was a tech guy for 25 years, chasing around money, job to job to job, and essentially learned about real estate investing, or what I thought was real estate investing, back in 1996 with the old Carlton Sheets, no money down packet that I ordered off of a late night infomercial. But I shelved that for a long time. Just didn't really think it was something that I could actually accomplish. And then after chasing those jobs around for the last 25 years prior to 2015, in 2015, I decided to jump full time, maybe not full time, but definitely head first into real estate, and very quickly discovered the art of creative financing. And I've been just kind of rolling with creative financing ever since. I got a little sidetracked there for a while. I started doing some wholesaling, and just found out it was not my forte, and just kind of got back into the buy and hold, long-term buy and hold. I don't know, probably right around 2018. And so, the biggest part of my the portfolio that I have now is, in fact, all of them except one door that we had to refinance is all done through creative financing, and many of those are subject to deals. So, 45 doors now, and they're all pretty much creatively financed, and so I'm going to continue to build that and continue to rock and roll.
Excellent. And I'm excited to go over one of those deals that you'll be closing on in a few minutes. But with that, thanks, Jeff, for your background. Yep. And Ken, would love to hear what you were doing before real estate as well.
So I have a very different path than Jeff. I actually retired from human resources. I was in charge of human resources for school districts here in Missouri. We're in the St. Louis metro area, but I started in rural central Missouri. And so I came through education. I was a teacher and then an administrator, and then I took over human resources for many years. And I was able to retire out of that when I was 45 because of real estate. And so I've been doing real estate part-time for almost 25 years now. It's hard to believe. Jeff said he was a tech guy for 25 years. It's hard to believe I've been dabbling in real estate, right? Because that's really what I was doing when I first started dabbling in real estate, because I have a full-time job and I just do this. And so my model when I first started was I purchased a house, I moved because of my job, I keep the prior house and I rent it out. And I just kept doing that um, when I first started. Then I started doing creative stuff. As Jeff mentioned, creative stuff. I was doing private lending. We own property internationally through creative financing. I had a property. My wife and I, had a property in Costa Rica. We were doing seller financing and creative stuff way before we even had the terms creative financing. Like I didn't even know we were just doing the stuff because why not, right? It's good investments and all of that. So I've been doing that for a long time. I'm more on the kind of the lending side, the seller financing and the lending side. Not so much along my path until I met Jeff. Not so much subject to stuff specifically, but the private lending where I was the lender, right, doing seller financing, taking back second notes, all those sorts of things, or buying on seller financing, right. And then after I had met Jeff and I started doing many more subject to deals over there because it's just a great way. And that's the bandwagon now, right? Everyone wants to jump on the subject to bandwagon, but I can assure you, like Jeff especially has been doing that way before it was, jump on the bandwagon. So we have a lot of experience over the years, and that's kind of my background. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. Real estate's one of my main cash flows, but I like to diversify my cash flows, and so I have other businesses and interests as well outside of real estate. But real estate certainly is the number one cash flowing tool for me, and like I mentioned, it allowed me to retire when I was 45.
Excellent. Yeah, it gave you really the path to reach financial freedom. And love that you also dabble in other areas of entrepreneurship, not just real estate. And as well, Jeff, you mentioned that you've been doing sub two for some time now. So it's not just this fad that came up over the last 2 years. It's actually a financing method that's been around for a while. With that, for those who may be new to creative finance and subject to, do you mind giving a brief explanation of what that is?
Sure. Well, subject to is nothing more. It's just a financing strategy. That's all that it is. So essentially, all it is the way I like to explain it is what we're going to do is we are going to kind of do what we should all be doing really when we're talking to sellers, building trust and rapport, and that ultimately that's going to lead into you building enough trust to be able to start making payments on somebody else's loan. So somebody else has gone out and qualified for a mortgage, and then for whatever reason, distress, or it's usually some form of distress, we are able to then maybe they can't afford those payments, or maybe something's happened in their life where where those payments are not being made. Whatever the situation, we'll go in and negotiate with our sellers and say, hey, why don't you just let us make payments on this thing? We'll go ahead and we'll transfer the title, we'll transfer the deed into an entity of our choice. Your loan will stay in place, and we will just assume the debt on that loan. Now, we're not assuming a loan; we're assuming the debt on the loan. So we're not actually qualifying for a loan at all. We're not qualifying with any lenders. We are essentially just making those payments for our seller. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, that
I always
helps.
struggle to really explain that very well, but yeah, that's essentially what we're doing.
Right. And it's not just in real estate. Sub two could also be in different areas of acquiring assets. But with that, what we love about this live Q&A for tech and real estate is being able to visually understand these deals as well. So Ken or Jeff, would you mind sharing your screen and kind of walking through a deal?
Absolutely. I have this one up, and let me see here. We're just going to do a window. So the one we're going to look at is actually, and I hope you all don't mind. This is almost all of our deals are evaluated with this calculator. This calculator can be found out on our website. But let me go ahead and blow this up just a little.
And totally, while you're blowing that up, Jeff, too, and I'm just going to give the shameless plug if Ariel doesn't mind. This is our sub two profitability calculator, totally free on our website. anybody can go and get this, and we analyze all our deals with this. It has various tabs, as Jeff will probably point out here in a second.
Yeah. So essentially, this is also the exact. I mean, all of our if one of our members comes to us and they have a deal they want to evaluate, this is what we're going to have them fill out. So we use this every single day. Every single day in our own business, in a coaching business, the whole 9 yards. So this thing is well used. And in fact, this evening, I am actually closing this deal. So this is a great opportunity to kind of show you what a really fresh deal is going to look like. I say fresh. I've actually been working on this for months because we've had a really tough time finding skilled labor to do some of the, particularly plumbing and electrical. This place needed a little bit of work, but it was so hard finding those folks, or not hard finding them, but hard getting them scheduled. We're just a really busy season, I suppose. But essentially what we have here, this is a property in North St. Louis County. And so you can kind of adjust the price points. This is probably a little bit above average as far as after repaired value goes up in this particular area. But it's on a really nice street. It's a really nice little neighborhood, nice and quiet. So essentially what we have in our calculator here, if you look down here, and you guys have to tell me if you can't see this very well, but if you look down at the bottom, you'll see we have these different tabs down here. So our very first tab is our acquisition assumptions tab. So this is where all of our inputs are going to come in. So anything in green that you see here, it must be filled in on this calculator. It has to be. You can't leave anything empty. So if it says, if your expenses are $0, you have to put $0 in. So for those of you that go out and download this, just keep that in mind. So essentially what we have here is a single family, 3-bed, 1.5 bath home. It's approximately 1,300 square feet. And its after repaired value is $185,000. I'm not even sure if I have pictures of this. I could show you. I'm kind of proud of this house. It's a nice little house. But our after repair value is $185,000. We don't really operate off of after repaired values because a lot of the houses that we buy need repairs, and sometimes we can pass those repairs off to our buyers. So we really like to focus on fair market value, which fair market value is going to be nothing but your after repaired value minus your repairs. It's what can you sell the house for today in today's market. And so that's what we did with this one. We did some repairs on this house, but our fair market value is $155,000. And that is going to be our cost basis for when we find our seller finance buyer, and that's going to be our cost basis for how much we're actually going to sell to our seller finance buyer for. All right, so the original underlying loan balance. Now this is the original. So when our sellers originated this loan, this is what I'm sorry, let me take that back. This is actually the current loan balance. Our original underlying loan amount was this number right here, $135,850. These folks were behind on their payments, and so they did a loan modification, and they had all of their arrears, their penalties, and all that stuff was actually added on to the end of their loan, and that's why we have a greater loan balance today than what the original underlying loan balance was. So I just want to make that clear if this looks wonky to anyone. The cool thing is we love loan modifications. The cool thing about this one was our interest rate on this loan is 3%. So that's going to open up a lot of doors for us on our distro through our distro method that we're going to use, which is seller finance. So we're just plugging in numbers here. Our original underlying loan origination date. This loan was originated back in 2006. So you see they haven't paid this loan off at all. In fact, they've added on to it. Luckily for us, the appreciation in the area has gone up, so it's not really going to affect us all that much with this particular one. And the underlying term was 30 years. So we can see that we have, if you look at line 23 here, we see we have the number of months paid on this loan was 216, but we have almost the loan has gone into the negative territory. It's not actually the amortization table is totally turned upside down. So the loan was actually increasing because of the loan modification. So normally this would be the other way around, where we'd have a little bit of equity built into it right off the bat. But that's just not the case with this one because they were so far behind on their payments. So we just break it down a little bit. We look at line 25 here, our underlying principal and interest only, $578.75. We add in our taxes. We add in our yearly insurance, which this is actually a little bit high. We've actually lowered this now since we purchased it. This was, I believe, a forced insurance policy, and that will happen a lot when you have someone who has a property that is either in pre-foreclosure or they have mortgage arrears. That lender will force insurance because obviously the seller's payments aren't going to the escrow account, which is going to fund that insurance policy. So it's forced insurance on this one. We've got this lowered now. So if we look at our acquisition assumptions here, we have right off the bat, we only have about 10K in equity here. So I think this is a really good time to talk about the equity part of this. I don't necessarily care about equity all that much. It's a fantastic bonus if you can get it. But just looking at this would be one of those deals that I think most investors would probably pass on, just because of the lack of equity, and also the lack of knowledge of not understanding how to do these subject to deals and how this actually can really create a lot of wealth over time. And so $10,000 isn't a whole lot of insurance for a lot of investors, and it's kind of unappealing.
Jeff.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much for walking through the numbers. So I just want to recap at this stage to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Okay.
So you have this deal that you found. Was it also, did we cover where you found this lead? Was it like down the street, or was there a certain way you acquired it?
Actually, this was brought to me by a wholesaler. So essentially, I've kind of built a network of folks that really know what I do, and I think that's a big tip for a lot of folks that might be watching this. Is once you learn this stuff, it really does kind of breeds these opportunities where you kind of become known a little bit as someone who knows how to do these deals. And for me, that's become invaluable because I spend very little money on real actual marketing anymore. I have just a really nice network of folks that bring me these deals, and it's been going on for a lot of years now. But yes, this one came from a wholesaler, and I was super happy to pay him. Didn't bother me one bit, but that payment to him actually chewed up the biggest part of this equity, this $10,000 down here. So now I don't have it reflected in here. I should have put it in here. But yes, so we're essentially into this thing with no equity whatsoever.
Got it. So you get a lead from a wholesaler because you've already built your network in this given area, saving you possibly thousands and thousands of dollars on marketing each month. Then from here, your next steps when you acquire this deal is to start laying out the data in a spreadsheet, understand the numbers, what's the situation, and how could you structure this deal. So at this stage, you mentioned that most investors would walk away and say, oh, there's not enough equity in this deal. It's not much I could do with it. For those who are maybe newer to the term of equity and why that matters, do you mind reviewing that one piece again?
Sure. Best way to describe equity would be, so for example, if you went to a lender, you went to a bank and you applied for a loan. Most lenders, especially if you're doing like a commercial loan, they're only going to fund up to 75 to 80% of that loan. And they do that because, the value of that property, of the appraised value. So what that does for them is that builds a cushion. That's your skin in the game. That 20 or 25% that you have to put into that deal, that is your skin in the game, but it builds a cushion for your lender. And that cushion is what they would consider equity in that loan. So equity is anything over and above the appraised value or the perceived value. That would be the equity that you have in a house. So when you go get a home equity line of credit, for example, they're going to give you a line of credit based upon actual value versus what is owed against the property. So if you own a property free and clear, you've got 100% equity in that property.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation. And we also have a quick question from Rafe. In your opinion, is it more efficient to pay a referral fee, so say to like a wholesaler, than paying for maybe marketing, like your own lead generation pipeline? And is there an average that you would pay for referral fee?
That's a touchy subject.
Yeah, that's definitely tough. We have very different opinions on this, so you go first, Jeff.
Yeah, I am okay. Just having managed multiple campaigns and spending, I averaged when I was doing a lot of my own marketing, I averaged about $5,000 of marketing spend on a particular, before I was actually able to get a property under contract. I averaged $5,000. On this particular property, I paid this wholesaler $9,000, and so you would look at that and you would go, well, it seems like $5,000 is a lot better way to go, right? Doing your own marketing. I would argue that I did zero work for this. I did no marketing whatsoever. This totally came to me. And so from my point of view, I am totally happy to pay a wholesaler for a deal like this. This property will produce, this will be 100-fold. If it went to term on this property, the income generated off this property would be 100-fold of what I paid that wholesaler. And so I'm not mad about it at all. I hope that answers the question.
So I'm a little different. I think that the wholesaling thing is a little out of control today, from what it was just maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I see a lot. Well, Jeff does too. We see a lot of wholesalers wanting $20,000, $25,000 wholesale fees, which in my opinion is just plain greedy and absurd. So to answer the question, like what would we pay in a referral fee to a wholesaler? Like what Jeff said, $9,000. We actually paid on another deal we have, which is a flip property. We paid $9,000 to a wholesale fee. That is not outrageous, like $5,000 to $15,000, depending on the value of the property. And as Jeff mentioned, the value there is that you don't have to do anything, right? It comes under contract to you. Now you might have to do something because the contracts aren't to your liking, or you want to change that in some way, but it comes to you, right? Kind of in a turnkey package, right? The contract package. So that's the advantage. Would I do that exclusively over marketing my own properties? My answer, that's probably not. It just goes back to what are your goals as a real estate investor? What are you trying to do? What kind of deals are you trying to get? Are you trying to get subject to deals? Are you trying to do buy and hold deals? Are you trying to do flip deals? I think that, for me anyway, determines how I want to market it. Can you get properties from wholesalers that meet in all of those categories? Absolutely, you can. But maybe you want to target something yourself for a variety of reasons, or a particular neighborhood or whatever, where maybe you're not getting wholesale deals. So I don't think relying on wholesalers is a good strategy. I think it's just part of a bigger marketing piece that you have. Like wholesalers can fit into that. That's my opinion. That I don't know if I don't remember all the details of the question, but I hope we answered the question.
Yeah, I think that was excellent. Excellent feedback from both of you. And I would also concur that it does depend on what your overall strategy is. Are the wholesalers in your area meeting those leads that you're looking for at a reasonable price? And if you were to put the marketing money into it, do you, one, have the time? Do you, two, have the spend and patience for it? So it really just depends on the area and your overall strategy. But with that, yeah, Jeff, would love for you to continue on showcasing this deal.
Okay. All right. So we've got all of our assumed acquisition costs here. All right. So we've got everything plugged in. Anything that you see in gray on this calculator is auto-filled. So there's automatic calculations that are going in there. This is a big one that I don't think a lot of folks, I don't think they think about it too much when they're getting into these deals, but this is a reserve requirement, and this is only 3 months reserves on this one. I would recommend actually 6 months if the deal can afford it, because ultimately what you're doing is you're entering into a long-term. If you don't have an agreement to get out of this deal with your seller at a certain time, which we don't recommend. We're buy and hold folks, so we're trying to keep these subject to deals as long as we possibly can. But a lot of times, what a lot of investors will do is they'll just get into these deals, and if something happens with any of these deals and you don't have a reserve, that payment must still be made. It's like any other, it's like any other loan that you get. Now, these loans are, quote, non-recourse in nature, meaning you are not necessarily, you're not assuming that loan, your name is not on that loan. However, you have made a promise to your seller that I do consider, a solemn promise. They're counting on you, they're relying on you to make these payments. And so if for some reason something happened with the property where it was no longer cash flowing, that payment has come out of your pocket as if it was your own home. And so a reserve requirement is a must on these things. All right. So our total front end cash requirement on this, although I didn't note it in here. If you look on line 17, repairs, we did make some repairs to this property. I just don't know what that exact number is. So, but if we made 0 repairs, 0 expenses to anyone else, our total front end cash requirement would have been a little over $3,000. So what does that do for our principal, interest, taxes, and insurance? This breaks down. This is what our projected monthly payment is going to be. So what I can do is if I've got this insurance down to $1,600 per year, that's going to obviously drop my principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment. So this is everything combined. This is going to be escrow, principal, and interest. So it would be wise for me to try and find the best insurance policy with the most value, right? Get that insurance premium down. So those are the numbers on the buy side. This is our side. This is our acquisition costs.
Jeff, real quick before we go there, this may seem obvious, but I just want to take a second and say, where did Jeff get all these numbers, right? Everything in green we put in there, and like, where are these numbers coming from? That's the current loan statement. So when you're doing a subject to deal with a seller, one of the first things that you want to see is like, can you provide me your last month's mortgage statement, right? Your loan statement, so that you can pull most of that in there. Now that won't necessarily have what's the loan origination date and what's the original balance. You'll just have to ask the seller that separately. But that's where all these numbers are coming from.
Right. Yeah. And as far as the current loan balance, if you want to use a tool like PropStream is generally pretty accurate with current loan balances and things like that, terms. I've only found a few of them that were off, and that was probably because there was a loan modification done that wasn't really it's not public record, wasn't recorded, or at least that PropStream picked it up, right? So, but PropStream is a good tool for finding out what these loan balances are and finding out mortgage information. So essentially, what we have here, bottom line, we have a projected principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment of $950.61. Our preferred exit strategy on this is going to be, remember, we're long-term buy and hold folks, but I'm a terrible landlord. I'm the worst landlord on the planet. And so several years ago, I switched to a seller finance model. So all of my properties, I'll buy them creatively, if possible. I'll purchase them and then I'll turn around and I will sell them on seller financing. So essentially, I'm holding a note. I'm holding a note from my buyer, but I also have a note that I've given to my lender. So I'm essentially wrapping the underlying mortgage with a new mortgage. That's really all that I'm doing. Um, how you convey title is a different story. It's probably a topic for another another talk.
Yeah.
But that's essentially what we're doing. We're wrapping mortgages. That's all we're doing. So I'm going to jump over now to the owner finance tab because, again, I'm a owner finance guy. This is what I prefer. And let me know, is this okay, guys? Can everyone see this?
Yeah, this looks perfect. And actually,
Okay.
one quick question before we
Yep.
dive into this tab.
Mhm.
This is a question that I hear a lot. So when it comes to sub two, since you'll be taking over that loan and theoretically attached to that seller for a period of time, what happens if they want to take out another loan in the future? Wouldn't their debt to income ratio be tied up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll take this one if that's all right, Jeff.
Yep. Go for it.
We actually just had this on a sub two deal. We had the original borrowers on the loan asking about that. So when you take over the payments for somebody, remember we're taking over the payments, or we're assuming the loan payments. We're not assuming the loan. So when you assume the loan payments, right, you can actually provide over a period of time. Let's say it has to have seasoning. It's just like buying a rental property, and then you have the rental income coming in, and then the banks, if you go try to get a traditional loan, the banks will discount some of that because against the gross rent that you have coming in. It's a very similar thing for the borrowers. So if we come in and we take over the payments, and let's say there has to be a seasoning period of at least 6 to 12 months, usually 12 months, we then actually provide a letter from our company to them saying that we are responsible for those payments and not the borrowers anymore. And we have been making those payments for the past 12 months, 18 months, whatever the case may be. Most all lenders will then provide a discount. I say discount, that's probably not the logistical right term, but will then take that off of their debt to income ratio for qualifying for a new loan. It may not be taken off at 100%, but it will certainly be significantly reduced. And so their ability now to qualify for another loan is greatly increased. So that's what you can do, especially if you're long-term holding it. The other thing I would say about that is most of the sub two deals have a distressed situation for some reason. They're behind in the payments, there's arrears, there's a personal issue, there's a divorce, there's a death in the family, there's all kinds of things going on as to why they would agree in the subject to in the first place. And 9 times out of 10, they're in no position to even think about getting another loan for many years. That's just the truth. So if they ask that question, I think they need to have a reasonable expectation about when they could even possibly do that based on the situation. Now, not everyone is distressed on a subject to deal. That is certainly true. And if that's the case here, and they say, well, maybe we go out and get another loan, say, not a problem. We'll provide you a letter that you can provide to your lender when you do that, when you go forward.
Thanks, Ken.
Yep. Yeah, good explanation. But Fannie actually has guidelines on that. So if anybody has questions about, well, I don't know the exact chapter, book, things like that, but there are guidelines for situations exactly like that. And when we're talking about subject to and somebody wanting to go purchase another property, it is 100% all about debt to income. That's it. There's no outlying factors. It's debt to income. If it exceeds 53%, then you're probably not going to get that loan. So, as Ken said, we have specific ways to deal with that. So, all right, are we ready to move on here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so from our acquisition assumptions tab down here, we jump over to owner finance. Everything except for the ARV actually auto populates into this tab. It actually auto populates into all these other tabs as well. But you notice here that after repaired value is not here because we don't really work off of after repaired value. It doesn't mean a ton to us. I prefer fair market value. Like I said, if it needs repairs or something like that, we can sell it as is, then all the better. We don't have to make repairs on it. So everything has transferred over here. We've got our projected. I'm going to go ahead and change my PITI. Well, no, I'll leave it right there because that is actually that $1,600 per year insurance premium is pretty close to accurate right now. So this will be these numbers will be a little more accurate for us. So we jump down to our exit section here, and one of the great things about this model from subject to seller finance is that we like to say that we get to kind of build our own economy into each one of our deals. And so what we're able to do is without being predatory or without price gouging or anything like that, what we try and do is we try and give ourselves a little bump in price on our sales side. And that's because we have taken the risk of buying this property with very little or no equity in it. So that's a huge risk for us. So we like to bump up our sales price to a reasonable number. It can't be anything outrageous, over and above what the neighborhood would support. But we do get to kind of build in our own cushion, our own bit of equity into this deal. Whether that's perceived or real is up to is in the eye of the beholder. But we are able to do that. So that's what I did here. I actually bumped, excuse me, guys. I took the fair market value here of $155,000. I bumped it up 19%, and I come up with a owner finance sales price of $185,000, basically $185K. All right. So look at what this does to our day one. I call this the day one equity spread. Remember up here, our equity spread was, I think it was what, 10,000. So here it is, current equity 10,000. Now these numbers are a little skewed because I did not fold in repairs and stuff like that. But had there been zero repairs and zero cash out of pocket up front, this would have been our day one equity spread. So we have a little bit of cushion in here for our liking. It feels good to have that little bit of just knowing that, number one, you have a little bit of insurance in this deal, and you're not always riding that line of having zero equity in the deal. So what we do from there, this is where the fun part comes in, because there's going to be a lot of wholesalers out there that would maybe get this property under contract and wholesale this property. We actually get to kill two birds with one stone here, because not only let's talk about this. What does a wholesaler need when they're getting a property under contract? They need large spreads. That's how they're going to make their money. With this deal, we paid $9,000 to the wholesaler on this deal. However, since we are seller financing this property, we're going to take a down payment from our buyer. All right. 9 times out of 10, that down payment we receive is far more than any wholesale fee that we pay, generally speaking. And so this $14,000 that we received from a down payment, that provides us cash up front, decent little chunk up front, right? And it helps offset the cost of that deal that we paid for from the wholesaler. So I hope that's clear. I might have jumbled my words a little bit there, but essentially we get the best of both worlds. We've got a fee that we've received up front, which is the down payment, and then now we actually have an asset that is going to cash flow for us in addition to receiving that payment. So it works out really, really well. This is one of the reasons I love this model so much.
Great. Yeah, let's pause here for a moment. So
Okay.
I usually hear at this stage, is this what it means to have no money in a deal, like little to no money to be able to acquire the deal because you're having a spread and it helps to cover the initial payment for the wholesaler. Is that accurate, or is that a little bit off from the truth?
Well, it could be accurate. That could certainly be the case. And in this case, that is true. We are offsetting our fees from that we paid out to the wholesaler, some of our repair costs, and that we're getting that money back. So we're essentially a net zero. We might have a little bit in it, or we might make a little bit off of it, but essentially we're at net zero.
Yeah, and that's how we design the deal too, Ariel. So if we're paying, let's say it's $15,000 in a wholesale fee, well then we want to make sure we get $20,000 or $25,000 as down payment, depending on what the numbers are, with the value of the property and all that stuff too. But as Jeff mentioned, he mentioned this. When I just want to make sure we highlight that is that we control these numbers. We're providing, right? We're owner financing. We're providing seller financing, so we control these numbers. We control how much we want to get down. We control the interest rate, which then in turn controls the cash flow, right? And we also determine what the end selling price is going to be. So as Jeff mentioned, you get paid up front with the down payment. You get monthly cash flow while you're holding the property. And then if and when that buyer makes good on that, then you get that difference in the spread at the end. So you get paid 3 times on a subject to deal, which is why we love it. I know Jeff loves that. And which is why we love those deals. But we control that. And I know Jeff's going to talk about too, like, okay, well, if we control it, then how do we determine what should that number be and what's the cash flow we want and all that too. So I know Jeff's getting to that in a second.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point is control is really everything. And, getting into these deals is like, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words, I guess, right now, but you can see how you get paid. You can get paid 3 times off of a subject deal and subject to deal. We started off with almost no equity in this thing, right? We gave that $9,000 to the wholesaler. That put us at basically, almost no equity at all. And you can see how we've managed to, through these numbers, you see how we've managed to build that perceived equity in this thing. We've got a sales price that everyone agrees upon is the new sales price. And so we've gone from we've started with something that has almost no equity in it. And we've magically built in a safety net for ourselves with a little bit of equity. And so that equity is going to pay us, provided this does not go to term. If the buyer is up refinancing or whatever, we're going to get paid out that that extra equity that's in the deal. This $25K, if they were to pay that off on day one.
Yep. And
okay,
who's making the down payment? That question that you put up there, Ariel. So we've been going through this pretty fast. It's the end buyer we find. So originally we acquired the deal. We're the buyer on the deal. We then close that, and now we're the owner. So now we're going to turn around and seller finance that to a new end buyer. It's that end buyer that's making that down payment under the seller finance terms that we're providing to them.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sorry, I'm actually looking at the spreadsheet. I'm not really looking at the screen, so I can't see those questions.
No worries.
All right, so this is the really fun part. So what I tell members and students is we all need, or we should have, a baseline cash flow requirement, meaning what is your minimum cash flow requirement on any given deal? For me, that's $400 a month. If I can't make $400 a month on any given deal, I'm probably, net, I'm talking about after expenses and everything, I'm probably not going to do that deal. Although I definitely fudge that from time to time. I will definitely, not abide by my own rule. However, this is where we actually get to build in that cash flow. So on this deal, you can see we have now this is the sell side. We're selling to a buyer. We're seller financing a buyer. What we want to be able to do is what we call arbitraging interest rates. We can see that this interest rate on the original underlying loan is 3%. So what we want to do is there's a combination of things going on here. We want to create an interest rate for our buyer that is both that puts them in a position, number one, where they can be successful. And Ken and I also disagree on this a little bit, but the way that I look at it is if you look at someone who goes out to, maybe somebody is renting right now and they're paying, $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment or something. A lot of times people will go out and they want to purchase a house because that will actually lower their payment. It certainly will be cheaper over time. It may not be cheaper today, but as those rents rise, your payment on that loan for a home is going to stay the same. So you're actually kind of yes, you are, as a homeowner, you are responsible for everything that has, everything that you have to do with a house. You're responsible for it. However, that monthly payment is going to stay it's going to stay the same unless you have escrow adjustments. So what I like to do on these is I like to get my buyers' payments to a number one where they can be successful, and number two, I like to put them just below where current rents are in any particular area. It's a little more enticing, I feel like, to a potential buyer if they see that number is at or below what they're currently paying in rent. I think it's a bigger selling point. Now, some folks go the other way; they bump that payment up. I like cash flow, so I want them to be successful, and so that's kind of what I do. So in this case, the rents in this area are about between $1,600 and $1,800 per month, and so I have structured this sale at an 8% interest rate, and that brings my buyer's payment. This includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Their combined payment to $1,619. So that is on the lower end of what they would be paying otherwise in rent. All right, so that's an incentive for them. And what you can see if you drop down here just a little bit further is that our monthly cash flow, that's certainly going to meet my requirement of $400 per month. So they've got a decent rate. Now it's going to be a little bit higher than your average lender, although maybe not right now. Right now it's pretty high. But they are certainly lower than this. So I bumped that interest rate up. Here are my terms. I'm sorry, I was pointing at the wrong interest rate. This is my interest rate. Here are my financing terms. I'm going to amortize this loan for 30 years. And then everything below this kind of autofills. You can see what their principal and interest payment is going to be. Once taxes and insurance, which by the way are simply passed through to my buyer, they're responsible for paying taxes and insurance as well. So that payment is going to pass through to them. And so we add that on. This is their principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment total. Now we have, you can kind of look at all these other numbers. It doesn't really, you can kind of figure out what those mean. But we can see after all expenses and everything, we take that down payment in. This is going to be, and we fund our reserves. Of course, we're going to fund our reserves right here. Our front end profit on that, we're going to walk away with a $9,000 check and $669 per month in cash flow. And that's net cash flow, by the way. So that's after our underlying mortgage is paid. And of course, we don't have any expenses because we've seller financed this property. We have no further expenses. Our buyer owns the property. They can sell it, they can rent it, they can do whatever they want with it. We're the bank at this point. So this is what our monthly spread is going to look like on this deal.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff, for walking through this. And we're going to fire away with a couple questions. But first, just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. So in this situation, you've solved two halves. Someone who has a property They have little equity. They likely aren't in a position to sell on market where they'll be profitable. Then there's the other end of someone who's a buyer. Maybe they don't have good credit, um, and they're maybe paying rent on a regular basis. So, or they don't have a large down payment to get their own property for whatever reason. So you're basically structuring a deal, coming in between, acting as a buyer in between, as well as the bank for the next buyer, um, profiting yourself by having substantial cash flow in between, but end of day solving the issue for two different individuals and almost kind of like bringing it all together within one
That
single
is,
deal. Is that
you
correct?
nailed it. That's pretty accurate. Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We're problem solvers. We try to that's what we do, and you make money by the bigger the problem, the more money you make by solving it. Right? That's what we try to do.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, now, if you guys are ready, we're going to go through a series of questions that's been asked in the chat. So if you can keep your answers as condensed as possible, that'd be excellent so we can get through each. The first one, though, will probably be a little bit of a tough question to answer briefly, but if you can, could you give us maybe a simple example of one of your first, say, deals where maybe that spread you made was substantial and really changed your life for the better?
Who's up? Ken, you're up.
Yeah, you want a specific example? I guess I'll just talk. I'll just share probably the most profitable deal that we've ever done. We purchased a house, and it was originally we were going to flip it. It was one of those quick flips. So, you just broom it out. You do a little paint. You do it. You tear off the terrible red carpet from 1974 and do all of that too. But the timing didn't work out so well for it, and so we decided, okay, we're going to short-term rent this, and because we got it in late fall, we're just going to hold it through the winter and short-term rent it. Well, 3 years later, it was such a great rental. 3 years later, we were cash flowing a significant amount, and then we sold it off. So that deal, right? Sometimes you have to be flexible. I'm kind of an inflexible guy. Okay, here's the deal, here's the numbers, here's what I'm going to do, and here's my exit. Period. Like, don't deviate from the plan, because that's when you lose money. Don't deviate from the plan. This time we had to deviate from the plan a little bit, and it actually turned out to make us more money. And so that was like, all right, we just need to keep doing more and more of that. So it's not really a rags to riches story, but it was an illuminating. Sometimes it's you flip the switch and the light goes on, and it's an illuminating thing for him to say, we just need to keep doing this. And real estate changed my life. I think another piece of the question was that real estate changed my life. I retired at 45. Right. I'm almost 51 now, so it's only been 6 years, but I mean, that's because of real estate. So, I mean, it can make a difference in your life.
Yeah. For me,
Excellent.
I'm just going to go off the very first deal I ever did.
But that's
because
the best too, by the way.
it's my favorite, because it just, I was working a W-2 at the time. So any of these folks watching, if you have a W-2, pay attention. I got into, I actually hired a coach. In 2015, I decided I'm going to jump into this thing. And I hired a mentor. Well, I was kind of mid, I'd only been in it for like 3 weeks, but I'd heard this term subject to floating around. And my major problem was, I had a W-2. I had like an 835 credit score. It was crazy, but I had no cash. I had zero cash saved. I went through a divorce and all this stuff. And so I had no money. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I need cash to be able to go down and put these down payments on these houses. So it was just really discouraging. It almost caused me to just kind of turn away from it again. And I didn't know what to do, but I went ahead and moved forward with it. And my very first deal, I'm not going to get into the story about how I found that deal. It's pretty incredible as well. But what, like, once in a lifetime type thing. But anyway, I got this property under contract, and I just kind of said, I have to have a contract. If I don't have a contract, I can't make any of this work. And so I basically kind of I sort of just didn't leave this house until I had the contract, and I had it under contract subject to, not having any real clue as to how I was going to get this thing done. I had no contacts at all. I had title companies that are kind of just your traditional title companies, and you really need to work with a good title company if you're going to do subject to deals. So, kind of make a long story short, my very first deal, I bought it subject to, closed on it. I actually leased back this property to the owner at the time, who is now my tenant, which I don't recommend you do. Well, sometimes you can't avoid it, but I don't recommend you do it. Actually found her another rental property, and I closed on that deal. I had to let it see. I didn't know this either, but there's such a thing as called title seasoning. I had to wait 90 days before I could sell this to my buyer, which we do have remedies for now. But 90 days comes, I closed that deal, sold it. So I just basically wholetailed it. I put it on the MLS, sold it to a retail buyer, and I walked away with a check for $41,000. And that was my first deal. So that was my first successful subject to closing. I subsequently, after that, while that deal was going on, I had another deal pop up that I did the exact same thing. I didn't even put earnest money down on this second deal. The guy literally just handed me a check for $25,900. That's what I walked away with. So to kind of summarize everything, in my W-2 job, I wasn't quite making six figures. I was just below that, about $90K, something like that. But in that first year, I ended up closing 24 deals, not all subject to deals. I did some wholesale deals in there too. In fact, the majority of them were wholesale deals. But that first year, I actually doubled my salary. And, I didn't really, my accounting was something to be desired. And I didn't actually figure that out until the next year. I was a mess, just to be honest with you. I was a mess. But just figuring out and finally seeing those numbers come through, it was like, holy cow, this really is viable. Like, this really does work. And so subject to has been my primary financing strategy. Every single seller that I talk to these days, they all get a subject to offer if it's got a mortgage on it. Every single one of them. So, but yeah, that was kind of my aha, enlightening moment, was that very first year. Yeah.
Wow. From almost quitting because you're like, I don't have all this money for a down payment on a property, and then having that light bulb moment of, oh, there's other ways I can structure deals to make money, ultimately being able to replace your salary. It's a really tremendous story.
Yeah, I brag about this a little bit, but to this day, we found other ways to kind of like, if we need capital to go into one of these deals, we found other ways to do that. But I personally have put the maximum amount I've ever put into a subject to deal of my own cash was $8,000. And so that's just to give people an idea. You can get into this. And by the way, that $8,000 wasn't mine. I actually used a credit card. Those little checks that they give you to consolidate bills onto a credit card. I cashed a check for $8,000, and that's how I paid for that house. It was, but yeah, it's very, very, it's a very, very powerful tool to have in your toolbox. Subject to is.
Excellent. Yeah, you got creative there. And a big question that we get, which we don't need to fully dive into, if there's any other resources that you could point people towards, but how do you ultimately avoid the due on sale clause, or what's your concern?
So I'll take this one, Jeff.
Yep.
So how do you acquire the deed? Number one way is put it into a land trust, right? Some states don't recognize the concept of land trust, so then put it into a revocable trust, right? A land trust is just a special type of revocable trust. So land trust is the number one way. We do indeed take title to the property in our LLCs. It just depends on what the property is. So like, why are you getting it? It's a flip property. Are you wanting to long-term hold it? All those sorts of things. But number one thing is to put it in a trust. Okay, that's how we do that. And to avoid the due on sale clause, right? Just make the monthly payments.
Well, first you put it in a trust.
That simple. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's half the point. Like, we're big fans of trusts. Trusts are they're the most powerful tool I think that real estate investors have, and most people don't even realize it. It is the most flexible, and I mean, we just find things that trust kind of by happenstance that trust resolve certain things just by the nature of being a trust. But yes, Ken is 100% correct. But properly structuring due on sale only really comes about if you. It seems like if you've, at least from what I've encountered, is if you make mistakes on how you on number one, on how you take title, number two, on how you set up your insurance policy. In fact, I just talked to a guy night before last at this RIA. He was the third person I ever met that had the due on sale clause invoked, and it was because his insurance wasn't set up correctly. So, but yeah, very really good question. It can be a super complex question because there's a lot involved there, but it all starts with the trust, with properly setting up a trust. But making those payments, even with the worst, would you agree, Ken? Even with the worst setup, if you are making those payments, that is probably 90% of the battle.
Oh, 100%. Just make the payments, right?
Yeah.
But what Jeff's mentioning there is the red flags. There are particular red flags that will be sent up to the lender if you screw something up along the way, right? With the insurance policy and all that stuff too. So that's another reason we use trust, because lenders actually understand the concept of a trust. Lots of people put properties in trust for estate planning purposes. We do too. Right, our business goes ultimately into our estate, so it's still for estate planning purposes. The lenders understand that, so that's one of the reasons why we use. You can still use an LLC and be successful doing that too. It's just easier with, you take away all these red flags if you use a trust, as Jeff mentioned. It's a very flexible tool to use.
Great pro tips, thank you. And let's end it off with this question. So when it comes to real estate investing, a lot of people, their journey is to reach financial freedom, and then from there be able to pursue other things in their life that they've been looking forward towards. So you mentioned a lot of different strategies here, being able to acquire deals, being able to make money in real estate. But how do you balance to build that portfolio where you're creating long-term rentals, or you have long-term rentals in your portfolio to be able to reach financial freedom, versus the active strategies like maybe doing wholesaling in between or doing wrap mortgage in between? How do you balance that to reach your ultimate goal?
Ken?
Sorry, there is a gnat that's flying around. So it is like buzzed me right in the eye like 3 times now. So I apologize. So
yeah, I could rephrase that as well. So yeah, either how do you know when to long-term rental a property versus maybe doing a shorter-term strategy to make income for the near term?
Well, for me, it goes back. It goes back to what am I doing in my business and what do I want to do? Because I got to tell you, Ariel, one of the things that made me less successful when I first started is I wanted to try to do everything. I'm a rich dad education guy. That's where I started with my real estate stuff. So, I went to the wholesaling one, and I went to the getting properties from foreclosure one, and I went to all this stuff, and this was all great. All right, I'm going to do this wholesale one, and I'm going to do this foreclosure one, and I'm going to do this. And you know what happened? Nothing. Focus on what you want from your business. And that has made me a lot more successful. So I guess to answer your question, like this is a long way around it to answer your question, is what do I want to do with myself? Do I want cash flow? Do I want equity? Do I want quick money from either wholesaling something, $10,000, or do I want to flip a property for and hold it for 6 months and maybe get 30 or 40 or 50,000? Like what are you doing? And I'm here to tell you, like, as a person, when most real estate investors start, they are just doing it all themselves. And you're not going to be able to do all that yourself. So you have to focus and figure out what's your goals and what do you want to do. So if I want to do buy and hold properties, regardless of whether it's a rental, a straight rental, and I'm a landlord, or whether I am selling it on an agreement for deed, or I'm wrap mortgaging it, because I'm still going to get the cash flow either way, right? That's just a specific strategy that you have to figure out depending on the circumstances of the deal. But I am going to like do this model. Like I'm going to do the model. It doesn't have to be a subject to deal either, right? I mean, you can just straight buy the properties. Like we just do that because we're creative guys, right? That's the majority of the things we do. But we buy others. I have regular rental properties. Jeff doesn't want to be a landlord, so he wants to do it on an agreement for deed or do a wrap mortgage, as an exit strategy. So it just depends on what you want from it. We're kind of in the cash flow business. Like we're interested in the cash flow, especially if you still have a W-2 job. Like, okay, replace your income like Jeff did. Like he made more in the real estate than he did in his W-2 job. So once you get your cash flow to where you want it to be, you can walk away from your 9-to-5 job.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken and Jeff. Both of you have had a lot of experience in this space. And for those that want to follow more, aside from following you on YouTube, how else can they reach out to you?
Sub2empire.com. If you go to any of the socials, we're the only ones out there with a name like that. So you can go to any of the socials and find us. The Twitters, I don't know. Ken's favorite space to be in is social media.
Yeah, that's a whole separate soapbox.
Yeah.
And just real quick, Early, if you don't mind, I saw in there, it looked like 1 or 2 people had actually gone to our website and tried to obtain the calculator. We actually, and they didn't get an email saying to get their calculator. We actually have a current issue on the back end of our website with the notifications and all that going out that we're working on with the provider. And so it's so sad that I even had to say that, but that is true. So to get in contact with us, if you need that, we'll send it to you directly to resolve that to you. You can just do Ken at sub2empire.com, KEN at sub2empire.com. We'll be glad to send that to you. The issue with the website should be resolved here in the next day or two, and it should then auto come to you. But if you want, just do that. We'll be glad to help you, point you in the right direction. We have land trust stuff. We got all kinds of stuff in there that we talked about. Like this is the stuff we do every day, and we just put it out. This is the stuff we actually use in our own business. We put it out there for everybody to obtain if they want. So
very practical. Yeah, thank you so much. And for those, use that email below that Ken had mentioned so that you could reach out for that document or for that spreadsheet. And for next week, we will be having Vince and Jose from Real Estate API to talk all about PropTech data. And if you're interested to build your own leads list, bring it into your CRM, even possibly build your own PropTech startup, this is definitely one you can't miss. So with that, thank you so much, Jeff and Ken. Really appreciate your time. We'll be following you on socials. And